Today I want to talk about interviewing tips, and it's especially difficult for military personnel to interview because of some preconceived ideas that employers have. And if you gear your interviewing style to the misconceptions that employers have, you're going to have a difficult time. What I want to talk to you about today is taking and addressing some of the misconceptions that employers have. You know, misconceptions are reality in the interview world. How they think, how they view you, that type of thing. You may say, well, that's not the way I am at all. But how they perceive you to be is the way you are. And so I want to talk to you about some of the misconceptions that you may face when you go out in the interview world or into the private sector. One thing that I've heard many times as a recruiter, and I've recruited 20 years now, is that leadership in military is really easy. You know, you just give orders, they've got to follow the orders, or they're going to be faced with court-martial or punishment of some kind, that type of thing. And really, in reality, yeah, there is that part of it. But the key thing that we want to talk about is that you can be submarined in your leadership just as much as you would in the military as you would in the private sector. And so it's really important that we bring out some of these things, and we're going to talk about that. So when you communicate, you must be able to communicate your style of leadership, and you want to do that in sound bites and in pictures. And what I mean by that is, for instance, if I were going to be you going into the interviews, a lot of times people will say, well, you know, I was supervising 70 troops, that type of thing. And you talk about numbers and figures and facts. What employers are looking for in today's market is, how do you take and capture the heart of your people? How do you get them involved? How do you get them to see the bigger picture of what their specific duty is and responsibility in that position? And how does it affect the overall goal? So capturing the heart, raising them to a higher level, but probably creating a desire within them to raise to a higher level. So when I'm teaching interviewing to all people, not just military, is to be able to communicate pictures of your leadership style. And so you take specific examples of what you've been able to accomplish through your people. And you might take an individual that perhaps was not active in their own development, and you challenge them to be better than what they are. And so you took and created a situation where they had the opportunity to raise up. You complimented them, you got them on board, and that you turned this individual that maybe was a non-performer, and you turned them into a solid performer, and they may have even gotten promoted in the process. And so you show your ability to take and motivate a workforce. Very, very important, because in today's work environment, they're looking for team building skills, that type of thing, the leadership that goes with that. Talking sound bites, short snippets as opposed to long stories. And so when I teach interviewing, is to talk about in very short 30-second to a minute segments, really display what you bring to the table. Sometimes people go into long, elongated stories that put you to sleep. I've had individuals from military, they start in talking to me, and I recall in one instance, I finally broke in. I said, well, now, I want to help you. My heart goes out to you. I want to make a difference. You have just spoken to me for 17 minutes, and you've never let me interject to this point. And that is a tendency within military a lot of times to talk and justify different things. Another misconception that employers sometimes have is that military culture is rigid, and that type of style won't fit in the private sector. And you may have a difficult time if, in fact, you do take a rigid approach. But what I find a lot of times is the military is different than a lot of employers realize. It's very much team concept, very much getting your people involved, those types of things. So coming in with a rigid style, do this, do that, is not going to fit. And so you want to take and conduct yourself in a way that portrays a different image. You respond differently to questions. For instance, it's very difficult because I know it's been ingrained in you to say yes sir, no sir, that type of thing. Try and work on yes, no, that type of thing. not only in answering the yes and no, but maybe carrying it out with a sentence behind that as well to soften your approach a little bit, as opposed to yes sir, no sir. Say, no, I'm thinking this, or yes, I would agree with you on that, as opposed to just yes sir, no sir. And I have a lot of respect for military, so when I say this, I'm not trying to beat you up. I don't mean it that way. If you come in with a jarhead look, and a private sector employer has this image that military is rigid and has the drill sergeant type of scenario, and you come in with that type of hairstyle and a rigidity in your whole demeanor, when you come in, you're going to struggle. I would suggest maybe grow your hair out just a little bit. That doesn't mean that you go against your principles or anything like that, but to soften your look a little bit so you fit in the private sector a little bit easier. Another common misconception that we deal with from employers is a statement that they make, and that is where they comment that military personnel are not committed, retired military personnel. They say comments like, well, they just don't seem to have the drive. They're really just they've got to already have a paycheck. Why should we hire them? Type of thing. And so, some of that probably is justified if you take and listen. One of the advantages I have as a recruiter is I listen to the comments coming from retired military, and a lot of it is projected in their voice, that they don't have the energy level or the drive, or they'll make a comment like, really what I'm just trying to do is kind of fill in with, some of the income that we need to, sustain our family. And so it's really important to portray energy in your conversations when you talk that way. And so these are just situations that you're going to encounter where employers might feel that way. Another one is that military candidates are just another government employee. And so one of the things that happens is that there's a difference between a military contractor, companies that are geared towards military, that type of thing, in terms of temporary employment or our government contractors. And so they'll look for information such as facts and figures, and they're typically the ranks of that company are made up from former military personnel. And so you want to take and in your presentation convey action and passion, not just facts. The old adage is that the facts tell, but stories sell. And so coming back and showing your passion about what you do, and I'd probably come back to that earlier comment as far as how you get your people involved, things like that, show your leadership style, as opposed to conveying just numbers, facts, and figures. Really, really vital in your interviewing process. Another thing is that employers, quite frankly, don't understand military if they've not been in the military before. And so when you start in talking, it's a different language to them. And so a lot of the conversations that take place in the interview room are filled with acronyms, that are part of the military, and also talk in terms of mission and that type of thing. Well, in the private sector, that terminology changes. You're talking about the same thing. When you talk about mission, employers talk about goals and objectives, that type of thing. When you use the word mission, a lot of employers that have not been associated with military shut down. And they go, oh, another military guy here talking about his missions and that type of thing. And so I would challenge you to talk about the goal, things that you've been able to accomplish. Take as many of those acronyms out as possible and just talk the talk that's going to be geared towards a private sector employer, that he's going to be or she's going to be able to take and receive in a better frame of mind. Well, I hope these interviewing tips have been helpful. We have more interviewing tips and resources available on our website, which is www.directionalmotivation.com. Feel free to check us out, and if we can be of service to you, let us know. Thanks again for listening in.